I woke up to the beeping. Not sharp, not shrill. Just persistent. Steady. The kind of sound that means, you're alive, but not where you thought you'd be. The light overhead was soft and unnatural, like everything in hospitals. My throat was dry. My left arm was cold. My body felt like it belonged to someone else, heavy and stiff in all the wrong places. I blinked slowly. The nurse noticed and pressed a button. A moment later, the room filled with soft footsteps and professional concern. Voices I didn't quite recognize, one of them saying, "He's awake. Let's go slow." Then a touch, familiar. Warm. Her hand. Claire. I turned my head. My neck hurt when I did. She was sitting in the chair beside my bed, hair tied back, face pale, exhausted, smiling like she didn't know whether to cry or not. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in a week, but also like she'd never looked more beautiful. "You're okay," she said, brushing my hand with hers. "You scared me." I tried to speak. My voice didn't work. She shook her head gently, as if to say, "Don't try." So I didn't. Instead, I looked down. My arms. The hospital bracelet. The 4. And then, on her lap, I saw it. A bundle wrapped in pale blue. A baby. Our baby. He was sleeping. Tiny, curled, fragile looking. A miniature of everything I never thought I'd be allowed to love. She followed my gaze. "Oh," she breathed, tears rising in her eyes. "He's perfect. He's ours." I swallowed hard. Claire leaned forward. The delivery was hard. He came earlier than we thought. You were still in recovery from surgery, and she broke off, swallowing. "I wanted to wait for you, but he needed a name." She reached into the blanket and pulled out a small hospital card. Name, Ethan James Hartley. I blinked. Twice. Then looked back at her. Ethan? I must have misread. Maybe it was the morphine. She was already talking, fast and soft, like she knew this part would be hard to land. "I didn't want to make a decision without you. I tried to hold off, I really did. But they kept asking, and I don't know, it just felt right. My dad's name. And I remembered the way you smiled the first time I said it out loud, months ago. I thought you'd be okay with it. But I wasn't. Because we had agreed. We had agreed. No family names. No exes. No ghosts. We had made a list, narrowed it down, and settled on one together, Miles. Miles Hartley. Clean. Gentle. Something new. Something ours. And now. Ethan. Her father's name. A man I barely knew, who once told me, at Thanksgiving, over cold stuffing, that I should man up and propose already. A man who once, when I offered to help clear the table, waved me off like I was furniture. That Ethan. And now, he was the name on my son's birth certificate. I stared at the baby, trying to feel anything but numb. Claire touched my arm. "Please say something." But I couldn't. Because I wasn't sure what this was yet. A misstep? A panic decision? Or something bigger? Something that said, you weren't really part of this. Not when it mattered. Not when it counted. I don't remember the rest of that first day. Everything was washed out with medication and fatigue. Nurses came and went. Claire fed the baby. I stared at the ceiling and tried not to cry. That night, after they'd moved me to a more stable room, she held the baby in the chair beside me. I lay still, eyes half open. She whispered to him, soft things, sweet things. A lullaby I didn't recognize. And then I heard her say it again, gently, like it was a word she'd always known. Ethan. The sound twisted something in me. I closed my eyes. And told myself I was just tired. That this would feel different in the morning. I barely slept that night. The hospital bed was uncomfortable, the pain meds wore off unevenly, and every time I dozed, I jolted awake with the ghost of a thought I couldn't name. When the nurse came in to check my vitals around 6 a.m., I pretended to be asleep. She was kind, professional, fast. Said something about discharge paperwork and a final check from the doctor. Claire had fallen asleep in the chair, the baby cradled in her arms. He made tiny sounds in his sleep, almost like sighs, like someone very small trying to speak in dreams. I stared at them. I wanted to feel what I thought I'd feel. Warmth. Connection. Awe. Instead, I felt like someone watching from behind glass. Like I'd missed the moment the world changed, and now everyone else was already living in it. Later that morning, Claire's father arrived. I hadn't known he was coming. He entered like he owned the room, which, to be fair, is how he enters most rooms. Wearing a navy half-zip pullover and those gray New Balance sneakers older men swear by. He had the baby gift bag in one hand and a coffee in the other. "Hey, sport," he said, nodding at me. Not a smile. Not "how are you feeling?" Just that. Then he looked at the baby, his whole face changing. "My boy," he said, almost reverent. Claire stood to hug him, careful not to jostle the baby too much. "He looks just like you," her father said to her, then turned to me. "Well, maybe he'll get his nose from your side." It was a joke. Kind of. Claire laughed. I smiled politely. Then he reached out. "Can I hold him?" Claire handed him the baby. And that's when he said it. With a softness I didn't know he was capable of. "Ethan. Welcome to the world, little guy. You've got a strong name. That name served me well. You'll grow into it." Claire looked at me like she was waiting for something. Maybe for me to smile. To nod. To participate. But my mouth wouldn't move. Something about the way he said served me well, like the name had already been passed down, inherited, claimed, made my throat tighten. Like I was watching a torch being handed off in a relay race I didn't know we were running. He stayed for maybe 20 minutes. Held the baby, asked some polite questions about my recovery, and told Claire that her mom was watching the dogs and that she shouldn't worry about anything. Then he left, saying, "I'll let the others know they can come by." The others. I hadn't realized how many people had already become part of this while I was unconscious. Later, after a nurse helped me stand and take a few slow steps, Claire sat next to me and reached for my hand. "You haven't said anything." I looked at her. Her face was open. She wasn't angry. Just tense under the surface. Like someone bracing for weather. I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling. That it wasn't just about the name. That it wasn't even just about her making the choice. It was everything around it, the way her father had said it, the way people were already using it like it had always been the plan. I said the only thing I could. We agreed on Miles. She nodded slowly. "I know." "Then why?" "I don't know, okay?" She pulled her hand back. Everything was happening so fast. They asked me, and I panicked. He was here, and you weren't. And suddenly it just came out. "Ethan." I swallowed. "You didn't think to wait?" "I didn't think you'd be okay for days. You had tubes in your mouth. You weren't even conscious. And the nurses said the birth certificate paperwork was time sensitive. You could have left it blank." Silence. "I didn't know if you'd wake up," she said quietly. That stung more than I expected. Because I hadn't realized she was that scared. Because I wanted to believe that waiting for me, even in fear, would have mattered. But mostly, because I didn't know what it meant that she didn't. That night, when we were alone again, I asked, "Did you name him Ethan because of your dad?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't know." "Claire." She looked at me. "Yes," she said. "Partly. But also because I wanted him to feel strong. Safe. And I was scared, and it reminded me of something solid. I needed that. And I don't? What? I needed that too. I needed something that was ours. Not something I have to share with your dad." She rubbed her face, exhausted. "I wasn't trying to replace you." I didn't say anything. Because I didn't think she had. But it still felt like being pushed out of a picture that used to have space for two. We didn't talk much the next day. Visitors came and went, her sister, a friend from yoga, a coworker I'd met once at a holiday party. All of them cooed over the baby. All of them said Ethan like they'd known it all along. I started to count how many times the name was said. I stopped at 17. No one asked where the name came from. No one mentioned Miles. No one seemed to realize there had ever been a different plan. That night, I couldn't hold it in. I feel like I was edited out. Claire was getting ready for bed, tying her hair back. She turned to me, confused. What do you mean? I mean, we had a plan. And you changed it. And now everyone talks like this was always the name, and I'm just supposed to catch up. Her face tightened. I didn't mean to make you feel like that. But you did. I was alone, and scared, and I did what I thought was best in the moment. I get that, I said. I really do. But now that I'm here, now that I'm back, are we going to pretend that my voice doesn't count? No, she said softly. But something in her eyes said, but it already happened. And she was right. It already had. Home smelled different. It wasn't anything obvious, maybe the baby detergent, maybe the lavender sachets Claire's mom tucked in every drawer, maybe just the subtle shift of a place rearranged while I was away. But when I stepped through the door, leaning heavily on my cane, I knew the house had kept moving without me. Claire had made the nursery beautiful. I'd seen pieces of it before the surgery, the soft green walls, the rocking chair we built together, the mobile she found secondhand and repainted. But now it was complete. And the name was everywhere. Ethan. In soft cursive across a wall hanging above the crib. Embroidered on the little gray blanket folded over the edge of the changing table. Etched into a wooden toy box we hadn't bought. I stared at the stitched letters for a long time. It was delicate, even tasteful. A thoughtful gift, probably from someone who meant well. But it felt like reading a story where someone had quietly replaced the main character halfway through. Claire saw me looking. My aunt had that done, she said gently. She didn't ask. I'm sorry. I should have told her to wait. I nodded. But I couldn't shake it. The name felt permanent. Stitched. Printed. Spoken. Like the world had decided, in my absence, who our son would be, and now I was expected to nod along like I'd voted. The first few nights were a blur of exhaustion and pain. My body was healing, slowly. I couldn't do much, I couldn't lift the baby without help, couldn't carry him across the room, couldn't change him without Claire guiding my hands. I felt useless. Like a guest in my own home. Every time she called him Ethan, and she did, naturally, constantly, it landed a little differently. Not like a slap. More like a paper cut. Repetitive. Small. Accumulative. The weird thing was, she never said it with glee. It didn't feel like defiance. It felt habitual. As if her mouth had accepted the name long before her heart knew it might not belong to both of us. I tried not to let it fester. But silence is sticky. It multiplies when left alone. A few days later, my brother came over. He brought food, a loud laugh, and a newborn-sized hoodie that said "cool like dad" in capital letters. I hadn't told him anything. Not yet. He held the baby and asked, smiling, "So this is Ethan, huh?" I forced a smile. Claire nodded proudly. "Yeah. He's perfect." My brother looked at me and raised his eyebrows slightly. A silent question. I gave him the tiniest shrug I could manage. Later, when Claire stepped out to take a call, he leaned in. "Wait. I thought you guys were naming him Miles." "We were." His face dropped. "So what happened?" "She changed it while I was out." He blinked. "Like, out. In surgery." "Dude. I know. Did you talk about it?" "I tried. She says it just felt right in the moment." He shook his head. "Are you okay with it?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. That night, Claire sat beside me on the couch, the baby asleep between us in his wrap. "I can ask the hospital if it's too late to change it," she said quietly. I looked at her. Would you want to? She hesitated. I don't know. Maybe? It was honest. It was awful. I don't want him to grow up thinking his name was a mistake, she added quickly. Or that it was some fight we lost and never told him about. I nodded slowly. I just want to feel like I was there, I said. I know. But I wasn't. We sat there, in that awful truth. Days turned into weeks. Visitors still came, some bearing gifts, some bringing casseroles, all cooing over Ethan. Every time the name passed someone's lips, I tensed. Not visibly. Not dramatically. Just enough that my body noticed. My mom called one night and said, gently, I know it wasn't what you planned. But maybe it's just a name. I nearly laughed. Because that's the thing people say when it's not their name. When it's not their child. Just a name. Like it wasn't a promise. Like it wasn't the one thing we were supposed to decide together. I started calling him the baby. Buddy. Hey, little guy. Never Ethan. I didn't mean to avoid it. But once I noticed the pattern, I couldn't stop. Claire noticed too. Do you not want to say his name? She asked one evening. We were folding laundry. The baby was napping in his bassinet, arms flung open in a sleep that looked like surrender. I paused. I don't know how to say it without feeling like I wasn't part of choosing it. She bit her lip. I don't know how to hear you not say it without thinking you're mad at me. I exhaled. We were in opposite corners of a room we both built. Neither of us was shouting. But we were no longer standing together. One night, I opened my notes app and scrolled through the list we'd made. Back when we still dreamed out loud. When every name had a story. When we talked about who we might raise, not just what to call them. Miles. Rowan. Ezra. Theo. Names that felt like hope. Like clean slates. Like us. And now, there was only Ethan. Everywhere. Spoken. Printed. Etched. I wondered, can a name undo trust? Can you unmake something once it's been named? Or was this it? The point where compromise quietly became capitulation. The first time I thought about sleeping in the guest room, it was a Tuesday. Clara had just put the baby down for a nap, and I was lying on our bed, staring at the ceiling fan, counting the slow turns like breaths I couldn't take. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. Just tired. Tired of the space between us. Tired of walking around the name like it was something sharp. Tired of pretending it didn't still hurt. But I didn't move. Not that night. It felt like giving up, and I wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. The following weekend, her mother invited us for dinner. Just us, her parents, her sister and brother-in-law, and their 2 kids. It wasn't formal, but it felt like it mattered. It was the first time the whole family would be together since the birth. Claire seemed excited. Nervous, too. She asked me what shirt she should wear, then changed twice anyway. I told her they all looked great. She smiled like she wanted to believe me. I wore the same button-up I always wore to her parents' house, blue, soft from washing, faintly wrinkled no matter how often I ironed it. Safe. We drove mostly in silence. She tapped her fingers on her thigh. I stared out the window, thinking about names I didn't say anymore. Her parents' house smelled like rosemary and lemon. Her mom was already in hostess mode when we walked in, taking the baby from Claire, fussing over his hat, cooing like she'd never seen a newborn before, though it had only been 5 days since her last visit. The baby cried, briefly, but settled when she bounced him. Claire's dad clapped me on the back. You're looking stronger, he said, as if healing from surgery was a personal achievement and not just the passage of time. Claire's sister came in with her husband and their 2 kids, 4 and 6, loud and sticky-fingered. They were adorable, and also exhausting. Dinner was lasagna, garlic bread, and a salad no one touched. I tried to stay present. I held the baby when Claire went to the bathroom. I nodded when her mom asked how I was feeling. I even managed a half-laugh when her brother-in-law told a joke about diaper blowouts. But something hovered over the table. A thin film of something unspoken. Until her father cut his lasagna and, without looking up, said, "Ethan's got the kind of name that'll look good on a law firm someday." Laughter. From someone. Maybe her mom. Maybe the brother-in-law. Claire smiled politely. I froze. No one looked at me. No one said, well, they actually chose the name together. No one said, it was a hard choice. No one said, actually, there's more to that story. They just moved on. Like my absence from the decision was natural. Expected. Acceptable. And in that moment, I felt more erased than I ever had. Not because of malice. But because no one saw the absence as strange. In the car ride home, Claire was quiet. I watched the dark shapes of trees flash past the window, the sky heavy with stars we couldn't see. When we pulled into the driveway, she put the car in park and said, I noticed you didn't say much. I looked straight ahead. They already had the story they wanted. She turned off the ignition, but didn't move. You could have said something. Like what? Like, correcting him. Saying it wasn't just my idea. I turned to her. That's your family. Your choice. Your moment. You could have said something. She looked down. I didn't want to make it awkward. I smiled, thin and tired. Too late. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. She didn't ask why. And I didn't explain. Because some fractures don't make noise when they form. They just spread, slow and quiet, under the surface. The next morning, she made coffee. Left a cup outside the guest room door. No note. No conversation. Just the cup. A peace offering without a treaty. I drank it. But I didn't go back to bed. Later that week, my mom came to visit. She brought groceries and the kind of tight-lipped questions only mothers can ask. You look tired. I'm fine. Is everything okay? We're adjusting. She looked around the nursery. Her eyes landed on the name above the crib. She didn't say anything. But her mouth tightened, just slightly. When I caught her looking, she turned and said, You're a good dad. Even if this isn't what you imagined. I didn't answer. Because some truths don't need to be said out loud to be understood. That night, I tried to write something. A note. A message. A letter I might give her. Or maybe never show her. I wrote. I didn't need everything to go as planned. I just needed to be in the plan. Then I deleted it. Not because it wasn't true. But because I didn't think she'd know what to do with it. We kept moving. One day to the next. Feeding. Sleeping. Diapering. Claire was kind. Attentive. Tired. I was quiet. Present. Tired in a different way. We moved like people in a shared kitchen, aware of each other, careful not to bump shoulders. But closeness isn't the same as connection. And lately, everything felt like a careful avoidance. Of a name. Of a moment. Of a question neither of us wanted to answer. There's a sound babies make just before they cry, a breath they hold, a hiccup in their chest, like the wind gets caught inside them. You hear it, and you know what's coming, even before the tears. That was what our house felt like. Not crying. Just the pause before it. 3 weeks after the surgery, I was cleared to drive again. Claire offered to come with me to the appointment, but I told her I'd go alone. I think she was relieved. We both needed a little distance we could explain. I turned on the radio, rolled down the windows, and didn't listen to either. Just let the sound fill the car. When the doctor said everything looked good, that the incision had healed better than expected, I nodded. Smiled. But inside, I didn't feel healed. Not even close. When I got home, Claire was on the floor with the baby, playing with a rattle. She looked up when I came in. He smiled today, she said, like a peace offering. I nodded. That's great. She paused. You okay? Yeah, I said. But I wasn't. And for once, I didn't want to pretend I was. So I added. No. I'm not. She sat up straighter, suddenly alert. What's wrong? I leaned against the wall. I can't stop thinking about the name. She didn't speak. I know it's not just about that, I continued. I know it's everything around it, the timing, the way it happened, the way it just became his name without me. But it still matters. And I think I've been pretending it doesn't because I don't want to make this harder for you. Claire looked down. I'm not asking you to change it, I said quickly. Not now. I don't even know if I want that. But I need you to know I still feel like a bystander to one of the biggest things in our lives. Silence. Then, softly. I know. She picked up the rattle, turned it over in her hand. I've been trying to figure out how to talk about it. But every time I start, I feel like I'm defending something I didn't even mean to do. I sat down on the couch, across from her. I'm not accusing you of anything. I know, she said. But I think I'm still accusing myself. That caught me off guard. She continued. When the nurse asked me for the name, I panicked. It was like everything collapsed into this one moment. You weren't awake, I had this tiny person in my arms, and I just defaulted. I nodded. I'd heard this part before. But it hit differently now. She glanced up at me. I didn't do it to exclude you. I did it because I was scared, and the only name that felt like it had weight, that felt safe, was the one I knew from childhood. My dad. My family. I didn't say anything. Because now, it wasn't just about what she chose. It was about why she chose it. She hesitated. But the thing is, I don't even like that name as much as I thought I did. That made me blink. What? She shrugged. I say it 100 times a day, and it still doesn't sound right in my mouth. It's familiar, but not ours. I waited. But every time I've thought about saying that out loud, I imagined you would hate me more for saying it after everything, after I already made the choice. I exhaled, slowly. So what do we do? Claire looked tired. Not in the sleep-deprived way. In the emotionally dehydrated way, like someone who'd been drinking from the wrong cup for too long. I don't know, she said. And there was something terrifyingly honest in that. That night, I stood in the nursery while Claire napped. The baby was sleeping in the bassinet, arms splayed like a tiny starfish. I looked at the name above the crib. Ethan. Each letter soft and friendly, the kind you'd see on a classroom door or a storybook page. I imagined what it would feel like to take it down. To repaint the wall. To say to everyone, we changed our minds. Would people understand? Would they whisper? Would he, one day? Would he feel like a mistake we corrected? Or a child who started with 2 stories and got the one that mattered most? The next morning, I brought it up again. Claire was making toast. The baby was in the carrier, sleeping against her chest. Do you think we'd regret changing it? She turned slowly. You mean now? After everything? I nodded. She leaned on the counter. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But I think we'd regret not talking about it for the rest of our lives. I sat down. Can we try saying the other name again? Just once? See how it feels? She smiled, small, unsure. Then whispered. Miles. It filled the room like breath. Soft. Familiar. Ours. She looked at me. It still sounds like him, she said. I nodded. It does. We didn't make a decision that day. There was no dramatic gesture. No paint roller. No phone call to the hospital. Just a moment where we both said the thing we'd been afraid to say. And that, somehow, made it bearable. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in the room again. Not just present. But part of it. With her. With him. Whatever we called him next. It started as a just-in-case call. Claire didn't even tell me she'd made it until after the fact. We were in the kitchen, the baby asleep in his bassinet, his tiny chest rising and falling with the kind of peaceful rhythm that makes everything else in the world feel louder. I talked to someone at Vital Records, she said, wiping down the counter like she hadn't just said something seismic. About what it would take to change the name on the birth certificate. I looked up from my tea. And? She hesitated. It's not that hard. Some paperwork. A notary. A statement of joint consent. They even said it's not uncommon, lots of couples make decisions during birth they want to revisit after. I nodded slowly. So, it's doable. She gave a small, careful shrug. On paper. We both knew that was only half the story. That night, we sat on the couch with the baby between us. I held him while Claire scrolled through her phone, looking at baby name forums, Reddit threads, parenting groups. This one changed the name 6 months in, she said. Said their kid didn't respond to it anyway. I chuckled dryly. Hard to know if he would have answered to champagne toast either way. Claire smirked. We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked the question that had been gnawing at the edges of my guilt. Do you think we'd confuse him? Claire looked at me, then at the baby. He's not even 2 months old. We're still confusing ourselves. I smiled, but it didn't last. I'm not trying to undo what you went through, I said. I know it was terrifying. I know you did what you had to. I didn't finish. She didn't rush me. Eventually, I said. I want him to grow up with a name that came from both of us. Claire nodded. I know. A few days later, we visited the pediatrician for a wellness check. The baby, still Ethan on the charts, was healthy, small but growing fast, already tracking voices with his eyes. Dr. Ramaswamy was kind. Sharp. The kind of doctor who explained things twice without sounding like she was repeating herself. At the end of the visit, Claire said it almost as an afterthought. We're considering a name change, she said. Well. Reconsidering, technically. The doctor raised an eyebrow. Still very early, she said gently. And it happens more than you'd think. Claire glanced at me. Would it mess anything up? You mean emotionally or administratively? Claire smiled, tired. Both. The doctor set down her tablet. Kids adjust faster than adults. Honestly, the only ones who struggle are the ones trying to explain it to their relatives. We both laughed too quickly. She leaned forward. Do what's right for you. The name on a chart can be fixed. The name in your heart, that's the one that matters. Claire nodded. But I could already see the wheels turning in her head. What would people say? Would they judge her? Blame her? Would her dad take it personally? We talked about it more that night. Over dinner. While folding laundry. While watching the baby gurgle at nothing in particular. But no decision came. Because names are more than labels. They're stories. Stakes. Soft tethers to people we want to remember, or ideas we hope will stick. And this name Ethan had become part of a narrative that was no longer about us. It was about fear. About a moment she didn't choose so much as survive. The next morning, her father called. Claire took the call in the other room. I didn't hear much. Just muffled words, the rise and fall of her voice, a long silence. When she came back in, she looked pale. He said he'd be disappointed, she said, sitting down slowly. About the name? She nodded. Did you tell him why? I tried. I don't think he really heard me. I think he sees it as taking something from him. I swallowed. I'm not trying to take anything away. I know, she said. But it feels like I gave something that wasn't mine to give. And now that I'm trying to fix it, it's like I'm betraying both of you. I didn't know what to say. Because she wasn't wrong. That night, I stood in the nursery again. The name was still on the wall. Still stitched into blankets. Still on the little onesie Claire's mom had ordered with the words Ethan's first Christmas in glittery gold across the chest. I felt like a ghost inside someone else's story. I sat down on the floor and pulled the baby into my lap. He yawned. One of those perfect, soft newborn yawns that feels like a gift just to witness. Hey, Miles, I whispered, testing the name again. He blinked. Didn't cry. Didn't laugh. Just looked at me with those wide, curious eyes. Like maybe I wasn't a ghost after all. Claire joined me a few minutes later. She didn't say anything. She just sat beside me. And for a while, we watched our son. Silent. Together. Eventually, she said, "If we change it, we're going to have to explain it. To everyone. My parents. The pediatrician. Daycare, when the time comes." I nodded. I know. It'll be weird. Probably. She turned to me. But if we don't? I think I'll always wonder if I chose the easier story over the truer one. I looked at her. And for the first time since the surgery, I saw her not just the person who made the call without me, but the person trying to repair it. With me. Not for me. With. It was Claire's sister who heard it first. Not intentionally. Not through a grand reveal. It just slipped out. We were visiting for lunch, a Loki gathering, just Claire, me, the baby, her sister Mara, and Mara's husband Dan. The baby was in one of those portable rockers, blinking lazily at the ceiling fan while the adults tried to eat between interruptions. At some point, Mara leaned over and said, "Ethan, you've got your daddy's frown already." And Claire, casually, without ceremony, said, "We're actually thinking of calling him Miles now." Mara paused, fork midair. What? Claire cleared her throat. We're changing it. Back to the name we picked before the birth. Miles. A beat. Then, oh. Not angry. Not confused. Just surprised. Like someone hearing about a change in a TV show's cast, something small, mildly jarring, but not life-altering. Mara blinked. I thought you named him after Dad. Claire smiled tightly. It just kind of happened. I panicked when they asked. I didn't mean to make it permanent. But we both felt after everything that Miles was the name we chose together. Dan, cutting into his chicken, said, "Babies don't remember names anyway, right? Like, you could call him Banana for a year and he'd still turn out fine." We laughed politely. The moment passed. But something in me sank. Not because Mara said anything wrong. But because she hadn't known. None of them had. And that meant all these weeks, all the things I'd felt, the guilt, the erasure, the confusion, had been invisible from the outside. No one had seen it. Because no one had known it happened. Because Claire never told them. Because I hadn't either. We were living in a story everyone else thought was complete. And now, by changing the name, we weren't just rewriting something small. We were revealing something people didn't know had ever been wrong. On the way home, Claire was quiet. She drove with one hand on the wheel, the other gently rocking the car seat with her foot at red lights. Eventually, she said, "I think I've been pretending we didn't have to explain anything." I didn't speak. She continued. "I thought if we just did it, if we changed the name and moved on, no one would notice. Or care. They didn't seem to." Yeah. But I do. She gripped the wheel tighter. "My sister thought we named him after Dad. My mom definitely thinks that. And part of me, part one, didn't want to admit like that. Like maybe it made everything smoother." I looked out the window. She didn't say it, but I think Mara was a little hurt. Or at least, confused. Claire nodded. "I know. And your dad?" Claire exhaled. "He hasn't said anything since the first call. But I know he'll bring it up. Eventually." That night, we sat on the floor of the nursery. The baby was asleep. We stared at the wall above the crib, where the name Ethan still hung in cursive letters. Claire reached up and gently pulled one of the letters loose. The adhesive gave way with a soft, sticky sound. She held the wooden E in her hand, turning it over like it might offer her an answer. Then she said, "My dad named me after his favorite poet. I used to love that. Thought it made me special. She looked at me. But now, I wonder if it just made me feel like I owed him something. I didn't reply. She placed the E on the floor beside her. I think I used Ethan because it made me feel like I was doing something right. Like I was giving him something. I nodded. And now you're taking it back. Claire's face tightened. Yeah. And I hate that it feels like taking. Like undoing instead of choosing. I reached out, touched her hand. Maybe that's what all choosing is. Letting one story go so another can breathe. We started slowly. One name at a time. Claire said Miles aloud during a diaper change, half laughing when the baby gurgled in response. I whispered it during a 3 a.m. feeding, unsure if I was comforting him or myself. It felt fragile. Like walking across ice that hadn't yet cracked, but could if we were too loud. Still, we kept going. A week later, we told my brother. He came over for dinner, brought takeout, made jokes about how fatherhood had aged me by 10 years in 3 weeks. When Claire stepped out to get the pacifier from the car, I told him. We changed the name, I said, handing him the baby. He raised his eyebrows. Wait, for real? I nodded. It's Miles now. He looked down at the baby. Fits him better, honestly. That surprised me. You think? He shrugged. I always thought Ethan sounded like a tax consultant. Miles sounds like a guy who writes songs in his garage. I laughed. Claire came back in. My brother didn't say anything else about it. But as he left later, he turned to me at the door. Glad you said something, he said. Most people just eat their resentment like a sandwich and pretend they're not choking. That night, Claire and I lay in bed, facing each other. You okay? I asked. She nodded. I feel lighter, she said. But also, guilty. For what? For not being honest sooner. With them. With you. I reached for her hand. You were scared. I get that. I didn't want to look like I messed up. I squeezed her fingers. We all mess up. This is just one we get to unmess. A little. She smiled. I'm still scared. Me too. But you're here. So are you. Later, I watched her sleep, the rise and fall of her back beneath the blanket, and I thought. Maybe love isn't the absence of mistakes. Maybe it's the decision to keep showing up after them. Maybe it's being willing to tell the whole story even when it starts halfway through. The name change became official on a Wednesday. It happened without ceremony, just a notarized document, a couple of signatures, and a slightly awkward exchange at the Vital Records office. The clerk looked over the form, nodded without judgment, and asked, "First-time parents?" We both nodded. She smiled, clicking away at her keyboard. Happens more often than you'd think. Still, as we stood there waiting for the printed certificate, I felt the knot in Claire's stomach without her saying a word. Her shoulders were stiff. Her lips pressed tight. The weight of doing something right doesn't always come with relief. Sometimes it just gives shape to a guilt that had been floating, shapeless, for too long. When we got home, we framed the new certificate. Name, Miles Hartley. No middle name yet. We decided to wait on that. One name at a time. It wasn't the name on the certificate that made things feel real. It was how quickly everything else had to catch up: pediatrician forms, insurance, daycare waitlists, monogrammed gifts from well-meaning relatives. We replaced what we could. We corrected what we couldn't. Some items went quietly into storage. Others, the ones that couldn't be scrubbed of the past, we packed away in a box labeled First Weeks. Claire placed the baby blanket with Ethan embroidered across it in the box last. She hesitated before sealing it. He'll ask about this one day, she said. I nodded. We'll tell him the truth. That he had 2 names. And we chose the one that felt most like his. She looked at me. Will that be enough? I think it has to be. Her father found out 3 days later. He called while I was making coffee. Claire answered in the hallway, out of sight, but not out of earshot. I didn't mean to listen. But I did. It wasn't loud. There was no shouting. But the disappointment in his voice, that quiet, clipped tone he used when he felt wronged, traveled through the wall like cold. Claire barely spoke. She said things like, "I know, and we talked about it a lot, and it wasn't about you." Each word dropped like a pebble into a still pond. Each one widened the silence. When she hung up, she stood in the doorway of the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes far away. I poured her coffee. She didn't take it. "He said he understood," she said flatly. "But he doesn't." I said nothing. Claire sat down at the table and finally took the mug. "He said he'll always love Miles. But it's going to take time." "That's fair," I said carefully. She didn't look up. "It wasn't his to name," she said. "And I gave it to him anyway." A long pause. "And now I've taken it back." That night, she didn't eat much. We sat with the baby between us, the new name now part of our vocabulary, not perfect yet, but practiced. Claire rocked him gently and whispered, "Miles," as if making sure he still recognized her. Then she looked up at me. "Do you think I did the right thing?" I paused. Not because I doubted, but because I knew how easily an answer, even an honest one, could sound like an accusation. "I think we did something hard," I said. "Together. And I think hard things don't always feel right immediately." She nodded. "I keep thinking about how my dad looked at him. Like he was proud. Like he saw himself in him. I don't know if he'll look at him that way again." "Maybe not," I said. "But Miles will look at you. And see someone who tried." She closed her eyes. Then whispered, "I wanted it to feel like a win." I knew what she meant. But this wasn't a win. This was a choice. One that cost something. One that gave something else back. Later that week, Claire's dad sent a gift. A letterboard frame with interchangeable letters. No name on it. Just a quote. "The strongest names are the ones you grow into." Claire stared at it for a long time before putting it on a shelf in the nursery. "He's trying," she said. I didn't say anything. Because I wasn't sure he was. But I knew she needed to believe he might. We went for a walk that evening. The weather was warming. Early spring. Claire carried the baby in the wrap. I walked beside her, slower than I once did, still mindful of the surgical scar that hadn't quite stopped pulling when I stretched too far. We passed a neighbor, someone we barely knew, and she peeked into the wrap. "Oh, he's precious. What's his name?" Claire hesitated the briefest moment, then smiled. "Miles." The woman grinned. "Beautiful. Classic but cool. Love it." We thanked her and kept walking. A few steps later, Claire whispered, "That was the first time I said it to someone new." "How'd it feel?" She looked down at him. "Like I'm still learning to believe it." That night, I sat with Miles asleep on my chest, his little hand fisted against my shirt. Claire was brushing her teeth. And I thought, the hardest part of being a parent isn't knowing what to name your child. It's knowing that, one day, they'll ask why you did. And your answer won't be perfect. Just honest. Just human. Claire came back into the room and climbed into bed. I turned to her and said, "Whatever story we tell him, let's make sure it includes the part where we fought to make it ours." She nodded. "I think that's the only part that matters." It was a Saturday morning when I found it. I wasn't looking for anything. I'd gone to the drawer in the desk, the one where we kept stamps and batteries and half-dried pens, to find a charger cord. I opened the wrong side. A stack of loose papers shifted, and an envelope slid out. My name wasn't on it. No stamp. No address. It wasn't sealed. Just folded once. Tucked under a baby milestone journal Claire had been meaning to start. I hesitated. Then read it. I don't know if that was right. But I read it. To the woman who named him without asking. "I know why you did it. You were scared. You were alone. You just pushed a tiny person into the world, and your fiancé, the one who was supposed to be beside you, was behind a wall of machines and anesthesia. You didn't think he'd wake up for days. Maybe not at all. And you needed something. A word. A root. Something to hold on to. You picked a name that felt safe. Familiar. You picked your father's name, even though you swore you wouldn't. Not because it was perfect, but because it was solid. You needed solid. But here's what you didn't think about. How much he needed to feel like he was still part of the story. That man, your man, has always tried to include you. Always said we even when you rolled your eyes. Always folded you into decisions like it was instinct. And when you made the biggest decision of your shared life without him, you changed the shape of something. Not irreparably. But deeply. You did what you thought was best in a moment of fear. But you never gave him the chance to say yes. And now, he's quietly trying to forgive you. Not because he has to. But because he still wants to write the story with you. So stop pretending this isn't a wound. Own it. Name it. So that the next name you choose, for your son, for yourself, for your family, can be one you both speak without swallowing. Love. The you who knows better now. I read it twice. The first time, I felt shock. Not betrayal. Not intrusion. Just surprise. The second time, I cried. Not loud. Not messy. Just quiet, silent tears down my cheek, because I finally saw her. Not just Claire, the woman who made a decision I resented. But Claire, the woman who made a decision she regretted before I even had a chance to be angry. She didn't know I found it. Not at first. That night, after we put Miles to bed, we sat on the couch, legs tangled under the blanket, the TV playing something neither of us was watching. I turned to her. I saw the letter. Her whole body tensed. I wasn't looking for it, I added quickly. It just fell out. She didn't say anything. Then, quietly. I was going to throw it away. Why didn't you? She shrugged. Because I wasn't ready to let go of how much I hated myself. My chest tightened. You don't have to hate yourself to know you hurt me. She looked at me, startled. I mean it, I said. I was hurt. Still am, sometimes. But I never wanted you to carry this alone. Claire pressed her hands to her face. I didn't know how to say it. How to admit that the moment that was supposed to be the most sacred between us, his birth, is something I can't look at without also seeing how I failed you. You didn't fail me, I said. She shook her head. Then why did it feel like I did? I reached for her hand. Because you care. And because you're human. And because we don't get to control the shape of grief or fear or regret. Claire leaned into me, forehead on my shoulder. Do you still wish I'd waited? I thought about it. Yeah, I said. I do. She exhaled shakily. But I'm glad you told the truth. Even if it came late. She looked up. I wanted to be perfect. You're not. She laughed through a sniffle. I know. I touched her cheek. But you're here. And you're trying. That counts more. A few days later, I started writing something of my own. Not a letter. Not a speech. Just a list. A private one. Things I want to tell Miles when he's old enough to ask. Your mom named you Ethan the day you were born, and that was brave. We changed it to Miles because we wanted your name to start with us, not before us. We disagreed. Quietly, painfully. But we found each other again. You were never the reason for the fracture, only the reason we learned how to mend. We framed the new name above the crib the following weekend. Same wood. Same cursive. Just new letters. Claire hung it. I watched. Neither of us cried. Neither of us smiled too wide. It wasn't a celebration. It was a recognition. Of a decision that cost something. Of a story that changed. Of a family that didn't start the way we thought but started all the same. It was Easter Sunday when we took Miles to Claire's parents' house. Spring had come late that year. The trees were only just beginning to show green, hesitant and soft. We dressed him in a tiny sweater vest Claire had found on sale, paired with socks that barely stayed on. She fussed over his hair, what little of it he had, and kissed his forehead twice before we loaded him into the car. I don't think he cares what he's wearing, I said. He will, she replied. Someday. The drive was quiet. Not tense, not joyful, just still. Like both of us were bracing for something that might not happen. We hadn't seen her dad since the name change became official. He hadn't asked to visit. He hadn't sent another gift. He hadn't said anything at all. But Claire wanted to go. Not because she thought it would be easy, but because some silences, if left untouched, become permanent. When we arrived, her mom opened the door and pulled Claire into a hug before even saying hello. She took the baby into her arms like a reflex and said all the right grandmother things. He's gotten so big. Those cheeks. Are you sleeping at all? We followed her into the kitchen, the smell of roasted vegetables and honey ham trailing in her wake. Claire's father was at the table, reading the newspaper. When he saw us, he stood. Not fast. But not reluctantly either. Hey, he said. Hey, Claire replied. I gave a small wave. He looked at the baby, then at us. Then back at the baby. Miles, right, he said. Claire nodded. There was a pause. Then he walked over and, gently, almost shyly, reached out. Can I hold him? She hesitated only a second. Then handed him over. He cradled Miles like something fragile. Like a man who'd spent weeks rehearsing a moment and wasn't sure the script still fit. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, almost under his breath. He's a good kid. Whatever his name is. Claire smiled, soft and tired. Thanks, Dad. He didn't look at her. But he didn't look away either. That was as close to forgiveness as he knew how to get. And it was enough. For now. The rest of the afternoon passed in polite rhythms. Food. Light conversation. Occasional baby handoffs like relay batons. No one mentioned the name again. No one needed to. The air had shifted, not cleared entirely, but softened. At one point, Claire's mother pulled out the old Easter decorations from storage. Look what I found, she said, holding up a plastic egg painted with little bunnies. Oh, Claire said. That's from when we were kids. Her sister laughed. We used to hide candy in those and forget where half of them ended up. We all chuckled. And then, out of nowhere, her mother said, Do you remember when we thought his name was going to be Ethan? It was a throwaway comment. Just a passing thought, said without malice. But the room froze, just for a second. Claire stiffened slightly. Her dad looked down. Even Mara's husband blinked, unsure. And I felt it, that old reflex, the one that made my shoulders tighten, my throat close. But then, nothing happened. No one corrected her. No one tensed up. No one apologized. It just passed. Claire caught my eye. I gave her the smallest nod. It's okay. She exhaled. And for the first time since the day he was born, the name Ethan didn't make me wince. It didn't echo like a betrayal. It just sounded like a footnote. Something that almost was. But isn't anymore. That night, at home, I held Miles while Claire got ready for bed. He was half asleep, murmuring in that baby way that's somewhere between dreaming and digestion. I walked him around the living room in slow circles. You had 2 names, I whispered to him. That's how loved you are. 2 people loved you enough to argue about the best word for you. He didn't respond. Of course not. But he sighed. One of those full-bodied, worldless sighs that only babies can make. I kissed the top of his head. You're Miles, I said. You always were. Later, in bed, Claire turned to me. Thank you. For what? For holding space. I thought about that. The past weeks. The hurt. The silence. The shifts. I didn't always do it well, I said. She smiled. But you didn't walk away. I brushed hair from her face. I wanted to. More than once. I know. But staying felt like the more honest thing. Her hand found mine under the blanket. "We won't always get it right," she whispered. "No," I agreed. "But if we keep trying, maybe that's enough." The baby stirred in the other room. Claire sighed. "I've got him." But I was already getting up. "No, let me." She looked at me. Really looked. And I realized we weren't broken. Just in progress. I crossed the hallway in the dark, opened the nursery door. The soft glow of the nightlight lit the room in golden shadow. I picked up Miles and held him close. Rocked him gently. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to explain. Only this moment. Only this boy. Only this name. Miles. Ours.